welcome back to the MMA Museum. I am Miguel Iturrati, and we are here with another one of our long interviews. An MMA lifer here, Joey Knockdown Brown, East Coast fighter, fought in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and I had the pleasure of booking him a few times. And we're here to talk MMA with Joey Brown. Joey, how are you?
Good, man. Great to be here. Thanks, Miguel. Appreciate it.
Good to see you. You look great.
Thanks. Trying to stay in shape. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I believe everybody's got a story to tell, especially in a sport where we just don't have enough stories. Really, everybody's got something to share, and I think that your story in particular begins with the fact when you fought in the 2000s, you were already in your 30s. You came to this sport late. How did all that come about? Why don't you explain your path to that MMA?
Well, I began my martial arts, taking my martial arts serious when I started training under the Bob Long School of Self-Defense. So I was a student of Bob Long and his son, Brian Long, who's a detective for the New Jersey State Police. So they were basically self-defense, real self-defense, the best actually, in my humble opinion. And then from there, I became a sparring partner, after I got my black belt, years. I was there for over 10 years. But I think it was about 8 years.
There as a young man with the police officers, just self-defense training.
Yeah, well, a lot of them were police officers, different branches, and a lot of state troopers were there,
okay.
But all different walks of life were there as well. But I started training there, put in the blood, sweat, and tears. And then eventually my instructor, Brian Long, Sensei, as I call him, he was kickboxing. And I became a sparring partner for him. I just threw myself in there, and just started sparring him and helping him prepare for his matches. He competed at Vengeance at the Vanderbilt a few times and won a title and everything. I mean, the guy was amazing. So that's my introduction into the full contact realm.
Okay. Now, Vengeance at the Vanderbilt is a New York City show, right? Is it Island?
Yeah. They had I guess with a lot of the UFC guys that are popular today got their start there, I guess.
Yeah, well, Sarah fought there, I think. Matt Sarah, back in the day, Phil Baroni, back in the day, full New York show. Yeah, so okay. So you guys were kickboxing. So now, what were you? Did you wrestle in high school? Did you, what was your athletic background?
No, I went to Wellington High School. Wellington did not have a wrestling team at the time when I was attending it. So my wrestling, I'll be honest, when I started I messed around. I always,
self-defense.
Self-defense. Yeah, there's self-defense. It's all different, ground fighting from self-defense and everything, stand up and everything. But my wrestling I got from actually my nephews helping me out because they wrestled, and my son wrestled as well. He was a district champ in 85 pounds. But I started taking it more serious when obviously when I preparing for my first fight and everything else. I had a wrestling coach, who actually went to school with my nephews.
Okay, and that's one of the. Remember when you went in, you were older going into MMA, but you were very serious and very focused on it. So how long did you prepare before you got into it the first time? The first time I'm seeing here is against Jay Russell, Jay Russell.
Yeah, well, let me give you a little. Let me backpedal just a little bit. I started, like I said, became a sparring partner for my instructor, Sensei Brian Long, and then from there, I was looking on the internet, and I saw applications for a tough man contest, so I wanted to, if I can survive sparring him, which was basically one-sided, okay, I can survive anybody because that's how good he was. So and is. So I signed up for I filled out application on for a tough man contest, and then I saw something called sport fighting, and it was with this promoter that was doing Grappler's Quest, Brian Simmons, Okay. But I did that. I didn't know who he was, never met him, right? I filled that out online. And then it was like maybe like a month or two later, I was at the Barnes and Noble with my girlfriend at the time. And I ran into Brian Simmons, and he had a light heavyweight with him at the time, one of his like fighters, one of his guys. And so they were talking to me. I was talking to them. And he said, hey, come on down to Eddie Rowland's place and you can try out for the team or whatever. I didn't know these guys from Adam at the time. So I was like, we'll see. I was a little skeptical a little bit. So anyway, I thought about it and contacted my brother Eddie, older brother, for backup. So I took him with me to go down to this gym in Elizabeth, it was at I think Eddie Rowland had a gym there called, it was at Rexplex, right on the Turnpike in Elizabeth. So we went there and I had to try out for the team. I fought the light heavyweight. I beat him. And next I fought Eddie Rowland, which was, I was always tired from the first one, but even if I was, Eddie would have got me. He kicked me in the leg, picked me. He's definitely the most underrated grappler in the world, I think, in my opinion. Anyway, he picked me up, threw me on the ground, boom, and submitted me. So I'm like, okay, this is the place I got to be for, NHB. The MMA, they didn't have a name for it yet. It still wasn't MMA. I think it was NHB, or it was whatever they called it, just fighting.
Like using the Portuguese version.
Yeah, Vale Tudo, yeah. So after that, they're like, oh, put him on a team, to beat those light heavyweight guys. So I went on the team and they scheduled me a fight. And then I remember the one guy came in, he goes, dude, I got this DVD and your boy's on here. I'm like, my boy, what are you talking about? He goes, the guy you're fighting, Jay Russell. I look at the DVD, it's a IFC, International Fighting Championship, battle, So I see him fight I think he had a fight with George Carson.
Okay.
And it was like brutal fight, and he wind up losing, but tough fight, this kid was fighting since the late 90s, So I'm like, oh, they're trying to kill me, put me in with a ringer, They're like, oh, don't worry, you'll knock him out. You'll knock him out. So I'm training. And then that's what led up to my fight with that fight, But and I
got canceled one time. It looks like they scheduled it, canceled it, and so
it was initially September 14th of 2002, and then it got rescheduled to November 9th, which was fine for me. I didn't care because I had more time to train. I just hoped that the event was actually going to happen because, for me, everything was lining up. My destiny is coming to fruition, and I'm happy. I'm like, wow, this is really happening. I saw myself as a kid with my hands raised in the air in a ring, as I was,
Yep. No, of course. A lot of people now, like I said, so what did you do through your 20s? We know you were training and a martial artist in your mind, but like, what'd you do for like a living, or were you still studying, or why weren't you actually?
I was working. I was working for Jaguar at the time. It was called Unipart Services America.
Okay.
It was Jaguar was owned by Ford, and Ford hired this English, from England, a company called Unipart to run their Jaguar parts and Ford Explorer and stuff like that. It was mostly Jaguar parts. So I would clock like at least 12 miles every day, just running around the warehouse, picking orders, because you had to be in the green. You couldn't be in a red. If you were in a red, they wrote you up. So you had to go at a fast pace and pick parts. So we were all like on foot running around,
like the early, like you now see like Amazon warehouses run like that, but this is like way back in the auto part days. You're running around doing that. That's interesting. Yeah. I had a Jaguar, but it was a Matchbox. Those are nice cars.
Yeah, I think it was always a rivalry between Matchbox and Hot Wheels. I always went with Matchbox myself because they were stronger, I thought,
Yep, I agree. But okay, so basically life takes over. You're in your 20s, you're working, you're studying martial arts, you're also seeing
I have kids.
You got children. Go ahead
Yeah.
and talk a little bit about how they saw you heading it when you scheduled a fight and it got canceled, and then a month later or 2 months later it happens, and all that. Those are ups and downs for a coach, for a family and stuff. And you're doing it for the first time with kids. How'd that go?
Well, yeah, I went through a divorce and stuff like that. So I was, get my kids on the weekends and see them and stuff. So to me, I was like, just trying to be a superhero to my kids. You know what I mean? Just trying to
Yeah.
do everything for them, because they were hearing, different stuff about me, through that, because divorce ends, it's never good. It's always bad.
Yeah.
So I just, focused on always being a positive influence and force in their life. So
Okay.
even today. So
And with Brian, you mentioned Brian Simmons. Brian was Grappler's Quest was a big show, kind of like one of the big grappling shows at the time. Sport fighting was his attempt to do MMA, which
yes.
what is why it was a little rocky and up and down, because it was new territory for him. But you got to win. How did that fight go down with Jay Russell? Talk about the fight actually.
Yeah, they what they had ESPN was doing a documentary Outside the Lines, and they were there. So they filmed a highlight of me escaping the armbar, and then me, ground and pound. So that's how I won, ground and pound. I escaped an armbar, which almost broke my arm actually. And then, I felt it cracking, you know what I mean? But I wasn't tapping. And then I just reversed them, got on top of them, boom, 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 pounded them for the TKO victory,
Yeah.
But yeah, that was ESPN Outside the Lines was there, and they were doing a documentary on the Ultimate Fighting.
Did that film? Did you see it air? Did you see your highlights?
Yeah,
Cool.
Yeah, and that just confirmed to me even more that I'm meant to do this. I knew I had a small window. There was a small window of opportunity, being, 35 pushing 36 and, basically pushing 40, right? So I knew I had a small window of opportunity, and I knew time wasn't on my side, and whatever I had to do it smart and I had to do it fast. So
Now, so what happened here with Eddie Rowland and Brian Simmons? Because I know Brian did a couple of sport fights, and it would seem like maybe they would be your team, and maybe they would take care of you a little bit, because after this, you did kind of get thrown to the wolves, kind of thing.
Well, actually, they were good guys. Eddie's a good guy and everything else. And Eddie was always what I always respected about Eddie, even to this day. You train with him, but he was always cool if you wanted to go somewhere else. You know what I mean? And
oh, that is unusual. That's nice.
Yeah, he was cool like that. He wasn't, restricted, and I needed to go somewhere a little bit closer too, because I was driving down to Elizabeth all the time. I was working 8 to 12 to 10 hours a day, and then going to train. So it was kind of like killing me in a sense, And then Eddie Rowland's gym moved from the Rexplex to Team Bama, Dan Miragliotta's gym, over there. And that was also in Elizabeth. I think a little bit further out. Not too far from it, but it was a little bit further out, I remember, in Elizabeth. And so we used to train there, And it just seemed like, the team kind of like, I guess, I don't want to say broke up, but it was just dying down, consistency of training partners. People would show up at different times, and I just needed to get my ground game a little bit better, So
and now, as a point of reference, too, Dan Miragliotta is the referee now that everybody recognizes, the big guy kind of thing. He's got 20 years as an international ref. And if he's a ref and he has a gym, but he's starting to go international, starting to get invited and being all over the place, then you got a guy, not creating a team atmosphere for you. You know what I mean? So it's like, so what about things like there are a lot of people up, in that area of Jersey. Like that's the time of what's I forget the name of the other show that was up there. Tiger Schulman's show. Those MMA Ring of Fire, was it called Ring of Fury?
Ring of Fire, I think was Ring of Fire was the guy who held the pads for me at K1 tryouts.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I
What
know
was that?
I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but it was I'm trying to remember his name. Uh, he was, I think he was one of the guys who managed Dwayne Ludwig.
Okay. All right.
You know what I'm talking about? Ring of Fire. He used
Yeah,
to
yeah.
run the.
That's a Denver show.
Yeah, it's a Denver show. Yeah,
Ring of Fury or Ring of Honor. There's a Ring of show where like Chris Ligori
Ring
started.
of Combat. Ring of
Ring of
Combat.
Yeah, that's the one. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
We're gonna
yeah,
have to
yeah.
edit.
That's Lou Neglius. Lou
Okay.
Neglia ran Ring of Combat, and I
Okay.
was supposed to fight for them a
Thank
few
you.
times, even once for the title actually. And then that got squashed. I don't know what happened, but it got squashed. And the guy was supposed to fight wound up fighting in King of the Cage. I guess there was a contract dispute or something like that, or he had a prior engagement with King of the Cage. I think his name was Johnny Suarez.
Okay.
Suarez. But I was supposed to fight him. That I thought was a pretty good fight for me. But anyway, I'll tell you how Suzanne became my assistant manager. What happened was, we're friends and stuff like that. And so she says to me, if you had an opportunity to train with two people, who would they be? And at the time, there was Bas Rutten and Pat Milicic. So I just gave those two names. So I'll go to the store, I come back, or I went to work, came back home, and then stopped by her, see how Rachel was doing. And then she says to me, she goes, "You're going to be training with Bas Rutten. He has a seminar in in New York, Scarsdale, Scarsdale, New York, and you're going to be training with him, and you're going to the seminar." I'm like, wow. So then you're going in August. You're going to train with Pat Milicic and the team. So I was like, this is amazing. I was like so happy, because at the time, Team Milicic was like, the number one team for years,
So you went to Iowa?
Yeah, I flew to Iowa myself, and I trained with Pat, and I got to spar with Jens Pulver, rolled around with Robbie Lawler, and I trained with the rest of the team there. The only one I didn't meet was Matt Hughes. Matt Hughes was on the farm somewhere, so I never got to meet him. I was there 2 weeks.
Cool. Now they usually give a newcomer a rough time there. What was your first time in the door there?
Well, yeah, they knew I was. Pat was a cool guy, very down to earth, real good guy. And I remember he put me up with sparring their national champ. He was a little bit lighter than me. He was about maybe like 145, I think, whatever. But he was a national champion. And I fought him, and in the first time I sparred him, I was getting the better of him. And then Pat goes, "Go again with him, Red." He's had like this red full contact fighter shirt on, and it was like, and so I won again with him. And then, he wound up getting the better of me. I was gassed, So, but that's why I was there, to get my conditioning, to get my, cardio, everything, and, technique. But yeah, but Pat was a great guy. And the guy's name was Marshall Blevins. That's the kid I sparred. Great kid, great guy. Real tough.
At some point, they took you out to that hill they have, or I forget what they call it.
Well, actually, when I was there, it was a little different, because they were in the process of, his new gym was being under construction, was being built at the time. So, we went there a couple of times, he was showing us around and everything, but most of the time we were just training. We were at his old gym and training there. And it was like the whole day, basically. You'd go in for like the morning hours, I would train there, take a few classes, go back to my hotel, recoup a little bit, and then go back for the evening sparring and everything else, So I did that for 2 weeks, but yeah, it was a great experience. I'll never forget, and definitely upped my discipline and my just work ethic in the game, because their work ethic was second to none.
Yeah, it has to be a little bit of an eye opener. No disrespect to the East Coast guys, but at that time, like you said, the Iowa guys were at the top of the game. So it's like,
yeah, I took to it too. Like I was like very comfortable there. Pat even went as far as asking me to stay out there. He goes, "I've never seen anybody." This is what I'll quote what he said. And you can check with him too. He said this. Everything I'm saying is true, you know.
I believe it, bro.
He said to me, he said, I've never seen anybody improve in 2 weeks like the way you have. You know, it'd be great if you can stay out here, you know, because he saw something in me, you know. So I was like, unfortunately, if I was single, you know, I mean, didn't have kids and stuff like that, I would have went out there, you know, and stayed,
Yeah.
but I couldn't, you know, so I had to decline, you know, but I was happy that he asked me anyway. So
Yeah, in a way, you know, like you said, the MMA thing kind of caught you late, but it caught you like a fever, and you wanted it. You're checking up and
yeah,
you're doing your things, but you know, here's a chance. If anybody was going to help you on a fast track, it might have been Militich, you know, with connections and stuff too. And
he actually did.
Yeah,
He actually did. And that's what I want to get into a little bit. Well, that's how those other fights lined up. You see those some of those big names, but anyway, it was I was going to I had another fight. He was helping me prepare for one of my fights. And the one fight he was helping me prepare for, I guess I was going out at this point, this is wait a second. Yeah, okay. He was helping me prepare for one of my fights, and that fight got squashed actually. So I didn't have an opponent, you know, but at least I went out there and I got all that training.
yeah.
So I my next fight was coming up, and I needed to, you know, get my ground game better. So that's when I went with Renzo Gracie, you know.
Okay. Okay.
It
Now
was
let me ask you this question. Somewhere in here, so you fought that first fight with Russell came up in November of 2002, and then
yeah.
there is time off, and then this is the kind of thing that only happens in the old days, Joey. So
Oh yeah. Oh
your
yeah, the
first
Ligori
fight,
fight, Chris Ligori.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Your first fight with Russell comes in as a pro fight, 2002, and then you
Yeah.
go back to an amateur fight, basically because they didn't pay you. But you
They,
go
they,
back
they didn't pay, and it was I cut weight. Listen, I got a story with that one. That fight, as good as my first win was, the fight with Chris Ligori was, you know, at the time I wasn't happy about it because I cut weight that same day to fight him. You know, I got down to I was like 59 pounds, you know, and he was 178. So he wasn't my original opponent. At least I thought he wasn't my original opponent. And I cut weight that same day. So imagine you're taking water away from your brain, you're cutting weight, and then the same day you're fighting somebody who's like nearly 20 pounds heavier than you. You know,
yeah,
no
and good.
excuses. I'm just saying, I fought my heart out. It was a great fight. It was a great showing for both of us. There was
Well,
UFC scouting.
I'll tell you, Ligori is one of those guys that made, you know, he was damn good. You know, he was damn good.
Yeah, he was tough as nails.
Yeah.
Hit like a truck, man. Dude hit like a truck, you know. And he had that like intimidating factor going for him. You know, I remember I walked past him and I didn't know he was my opponent, but he knew I was his opponent. That's what I'm saying. They all knew. They all wanted this matchup. The promoters, everybody involved in it, and you know, I remember Dante talking to me and he's saying, "Yeah, this would be a good fight." I was like, "Well, who is this guy?" You know, because the 155er never showed, or the 160 guy never showed. So I'm fighting this guy, and then I'm walking past, and I hear somebody go, "Gonna knock you down to the ground." I look back, I'm like, "Who's that guy?" And then some girl comes up to me and she goes, "That's Chris Ligori. That's your opponent." I was like, "What?" I'm like, "Okay, whatever." You know.
Yeah.
I went in the back. I prayed
Like I
a little
said,
bit. I'm like, "Lord, be with me."
that is the kind of thing that happens in the old days with the opponents and the switching
Yeah.
and stuff like that's crazy stuff. But Ligori, like you said, helps you measure yourself, and now you get there. Now I imagine after Ligori is when you went to Militich, because then you start fighting in Canada, and that sounds like
Yeah.
the pack connections getting you up there.
Yeah. What this is what happened after the Ligori fight, which was a good, like I said, it was a great showing for both of us. You know, they only stopped the fight because I had a cut on my eye. That was the only reason why the fight was stopped. It was a bad cut, and they stopped it for that reason. But nobody gave up. You know, Chris fought his heart out. I fought my heart out. It was great. We both got a standing ovation. We both received like a medal. Everybody came up to us after the fight. Everybody came up to me, you know, and we're saying, "What a fight!" You know, warrior, this, that, and the other thing. It was great. You
That
know,
feels
yeah,
hell.
yeah. It was awesome, man. It was awesome. And so after that, yeah, I went to Pat. You know, I flew out in Iowa, and it was August of 2003.
Okay.
That's when I flew out to train with him. And like I said, he was, impressed with my work ethic and everything else. And so he took a liking to me. And he said, I never seen anybody improve in 2 weeks as you have, So that was great. So anyway, going back, I was supposed to fight in Boston at what was it called? Combat Zone 7. Okay. Which, with all fairness, a win's a win. I went there, my opponent, okay, backed out last minute, didn't even show up at the event. His teammates were there, and I heard two different stories from two different team members. Okay. Yeah, his name was Ricardo de Borba, and I'm saying his name. He backed out of the fight last minute, whatever, and I get called into the ring. My opponent doesn't show up. They raise my hand, winner by default. Okay. I got paid to fight. Okay. The promoter's name, I don't know if he's still with us. Bruce Marshall was the promoter of that event in Boston. Yeah. He's a good guy, no ill will to say about him. I got paid, and I remember him telling me after the fight, after the event rather, don't cash the check, and I'm like, what do I do? I'm like, I gotta, I talked to the, Renzo's manager, which is Lynn Lane at the time, good guy,
Yeah.
and he said, listen, this is the first time I was, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. This is the first time I was getting the privilege to represent Team Renzo Gracie. And the reason why is they saw me spar. All right. Renzo was supposed to have a boxing tournament inside his academy because he had a boxing ring inside his academy at the time when I went. And this is around 2004. And I sparred this guy, and it got a little serious, and just went, and, I'm fighting. We're going toe to toe, swinging at each other, and the next thing you know, I hear Renzo scream out, "This is like pride," in his Portuguese accent, Yeah. So this is like pride. Love it. So I wind up hitting a guy, and the dude was bigger than me too. So I wind up hitting him with a liver shot, when I had him on the ropes, and then he just crumbled down. He couldn't continue. And, Jamie Crowder was there, he was at corner me. And also my boxing trainer was there, Ed, his name was Ed. Yeah. So after seeing that, Lynn Lane ran up and says, Renzo says you can fight for the team. You can represent the team. You can represent the team. So that was a real highlight for me. It's like winning a fight basically to me, because it was there in front of Renzo, in front of the academy. Everybody saw it. That was there that afternoon, late afternoon. It was great,
Yeah, no, so, getting to be Team Renzo, that's now, I remember that was part of what you bought by the time you got to me. But let's talk about those TKO matches, because now you're going north of the border.
Yeah.
TKO is a little bit more of a serious show at this point. They've got, St. Pierre there, as and there are a lot of guys that would be forefront of Canadian, like Canada MMA when St. Pierre was champion, really almost carried MMA. There were so many guys and stuff like that. And you're going up there kind of into the wolves lair. So how this work out for you?
Okay, well,
come about for
I went to the K1 tryouts, okay? And
where was that?
The K1 tryouts was in at the Bellagio Hotel in Vegas. Okay. So I was one of 70 selected. I filled out the thing, the application, whatever, and they got back to me. You were accepted. So it's open tryouts, but they're looking for people who at least know what they're doing. So, and I was told to enter that, through Joe Cavallero. Okay. And Pat hooked me up with Joe Cavallero, So I didn't talk to him every day, but every once in a while he'd give me some feedback and some advice on what to do, where, what to do. Enter this, he would tell me certain things. So I went to the K1 tryouts, and we had sparring. So I sparred this one guy. I beat him, you know, and there was this other guy named KJ, you know, and he was beating his guys, and I wound up fighting him, you know, sparring basically, not, you know. So sparring him and going at each other. Boom! And I remember him dropping me. I mean, I was like out on my feet. I hit my knee hit the ground. I got back up, and then we went at each other, and then they broke it up. You know, so Joe Cavallero was there. They were like, "Whoa!" when they seen that. You know, us going at each other. You know, and so was Marcus Davis was there as well. He was at the tryouts as well, but they saw that.
I'll tell you a little funny side.
It was KJ Nunes who the guy was.
Yeah, okay? I realized that. I wanted to tell a Marcus Davis story too real fast. When you mentioned Bruce Marshall, the promoter, and the check not being good right away.
Well, he said, "Don't." Let me just finish that. He said, please don't cash the check." And I talked to, Lynn's like, "Yeah, cash it." And everyone I talked to said, "Cash it." So I went and cashed it because I'm struggling. I got to make ends meet. I need the money. So I drove out there and everything to go compete. So I deserve to get paid. So I went and cashed it anyway. So he was mad that he did that. So it took me off the thing. So there was no record of me fighting on the event. So I didn't get the win. I didn't get the win for that. He did that purposely. And that irked me. So I left a bad taste in my mouth with that situation. I wasn't happy about that.
Good, man. That's a rightful win. I'll tell you, Bruce Marshall also, I'm sorry, not Bruce Marshall. Marcus Davis may have been the main event of that show or a similar show for Bruce Marshall. Because Bruce gave him a phone call too and said, "Hey, don't cash that check." And Marcus threatened to visit him with a hammer. He was going to kill him with a hammer. So, yeah, sometimes, sometimes getting paid was important on those shows. So.
Truth be known that he did that to a lot of people. I've heard,
Yeah.
So
what's sad though is at the end of the day, no matter how much money you got, it wasn't big money. So that win would have meant much on the record would have meant much more than any money you got back then at this point, because so that's cold that he did that, unfortunately. Well, may he rest in peace anyway.
Yeah. May rest in peace. Like up until that point, he was a great guy. I mean, Suzanne and I talked to him. He had a disabled child, I think, and so did Suzanne. So he was like a cool guy. It's just that one thing. It wasn't done out of malice or nothing like that. Me cashing it, I just said I kind of need to cash this, and he changed. Then he got mad. He was just saying, rah, rah, this, that, and the other thing, But they were supposed to count that win by default. And some fighters and some people may say, "Oh, a win by default's not really a win." Well, to me, it is. To a wrestler, it is. Yes, any wrestler, they get wins by default. Well, if I'm a fighter and I'm getting paid, and it's going on a record, guess what? I deserve it. It should count.
I think so. It makes you get in the ring.
I just want to clear this record. If anyone has a problem with that, they can come talk to me. Because that deserves a win. That was a win. So I look at my record different. I don't look at it as 1-6-1. I look at it as actually 3 5-1.
Yeah.
That's my real record.
Let's get into the Canada stuff because Canada, like I said, you went up there and you fought guys that were in the UFC later on down the line. So
so I'm getting to that. So let me just backtrack a little bit. So I'm at we're at the K1 tryouts.
Oh yeah.
So after sparring, right? Sparred the one guy, beat him. The second guy got the better of me. That was KJ, right? KJ Nunes.
No shame there.
I didn't know it was him until after I saw him. I was like, "Hey, I think that's the guy that was at the K1 tryouts." That was him. Unless he has a dead ringer with the same name. No. It was him. So anyway, go to after that, we're doing striking the pads at the K1 tryouts, and the guy, all of a sudden I'm going blank on the guy's name. he was the one. He's operated the K1 USA. He was the fight coordinator for K1 USA. Okay. And Sven Bean. That was his name.
Okay. Yeah.
You heard of Sven? He's the one who do it Ring of Fire in Colorado.
Absolutely. He's out of Denver. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Out of Colorado. But yeah.
Yeah. So he was the guy. Cool guy. He was holding the pads for me, And after the event, went home and everything. It was like, great showing, whatever. Everything was good, I didn't hear back from K1. So I emailed him, and he's like, you didn't hear back? He goes, you should have heard something, man, because I was the one holding the pads for you. I was impressed, So he goes, okay, listen, I can give you a shot at one of, I can give you a fight at Ring of Fire. He goes, and there's something else just came in. There's a guy at welterweight named Jonathan Goulet. 4 different people had backed out of fighting him. Mm-hmm. He goes, look, if you beat this guy, it'll put you on the map, He's like, what weight are you again? I'm like, I'm lightweight. That's a little heavy. I said, what's your weight now? I'm like, I was actually like 164 at the time. Mm-hmm. 164, 165, whatever. So I took the fight, and yeah, the rest is history. I went there and, prepared for that fight. I was training with Tommy Brooks from, it was a Gold's Gym in Totowa. Tommy Brooks was a boxing trainer. So I was training with him. He showed me some stuff, and I would go there early in the morning at like 7 a.m., go to my job at Unipart, and then after that, go to Renzo's in the evening.
Yeah.
So and the next morning to get up for work, I basically could not move from, my back was like killing me. I was like, yeah, that was my life, That was my life.
The Goulet fight, you went up there. So was it just bad luck? Was it just something that,
Yeah, what happened was everyone said,
going in the ring.
What happened was that I had my hands up, and the first kick he threw was a front leg roundhouse kick, I believe, or a switch. It was with his front leg. He threw the kick. It bounced off my hand, my right hand, hit me in the temple. I was out. I never felt the knee, as brutal as it looks. Never felt the knee and never felt the punch afterwards. I didn't even know. I felt no pain whatsoever. I didn't even know I was knocked out. I said to him after the fight, the ref waking me up. I remember the ref had this really long, not the ref, the doctor came in, and he had this really long beard, looked like Santa Claus, right? But his breath was horrible. I woke up, I was like, whoa, what the heck?
Oh, man.
I remember waking up to that, right? And then all of a sudden, I'm like, I see John come over, right? John Goulet. I said, John, I'll be with you in a minute. He looked at me, and then George St. Pierre walked over. He goes, "Knockdown, you okay, buddy?" I'm like, yeah, I'll be there in a minute. Yeah, the ref goes, "Dude, you were knocked out." I was like, "What?" I'm like, "Get out of here! No way!" They're like, "Yeah, you were knocked out." I was like, "Okay." And I hear, and mixed martial arts world record, 7 seconds. I was like, "Okay, all right." It's kind of embarrassing, right?
Yeah,
get knocked out in 7 seconds. Yeah, especially when they interviewed me before the fight, and Stefan Patry, he's going, "I need you to, talk some crap."
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm not really that kind of guy who's going to talk crap. You know what I mean? Unless there's like some kind of issue. I don't know the guy, So it's like, well, where do you train? I train, Renzo's, and I train, with Tommy Brooks. And well, who did Tommy Brooks train? So I have to tell him. So in the edited version, it sounds like I'm saying, "Oh yeah, well my instructor trained Mike Tyson in Holyfield." So in other words, so I should win. That's how it came across, but that's not really what I said. It was taken out of context. But I was like, all right, this is what they do. So no problem. So it was like I said, it was an ego thing. It hurt. It was embarrassing getting knocked out in 7 seconds. But I look at it like this. It was on a best TKO's greatest hits. I was on a DVD. So win or lose, and that's how I had to look at it. If I'm going to lose to anybody in all my fights, I'm going to lose to somebody who's a name. I'm not going to lose to nobody, because I've always thought, my father, when I was a kid, my brothers and I and my sister even, you know, always said, you know, you can be anything you want to be. You got the world by the balls. Just go and get it, you know? And I believe that. I believe that. And, you know, I just always believe that I can achieve anything, if, you know, good Lord willing, you know? So that's how that was. But yeah, that was
how was the
experience.
trip too? You know, you got into Iowa, but training's different than an actual fight trip. You know, how was the treatment in general, like the food, the hotel? Was that part of the problem? Were you just not in the game? You know, mentally?
No. He just simply caught me with a fluke kick.
Okay, that's fair.
He legitimately caught me with a kick, you know, and he was on a tear at that time. He was beating everybody.
Yeah, no,
and, he really was. No, he was good. He caught me. I didn't, like, I blocked it, but it ricocheted in the video. I mean, they used to have the video up there all the time. Now you can't find it anywhere. But anyway, it hit me in the temple. I was out. You know, I had my hands up. It just ricocheted off my hand. Bink. His foot or temple shin hit me in the temple. I was out. Like I said, no pain. Didn't even know the fight was over. And you know, Stefan thought it was a fluke. Everyone thought it was a fluke. You know.
Well, they had you back. To give Stefan credit, they brought you back in.
They brought me back to fight Sam, the #1 lightweight contender in Canada.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And this is where I apologize to you in an interview with Sam.
Yeah.
You know, I referred to you as kind of being a lower level guy, and you know, that's not the way I meant to come out, but I knew you could tell Sam was going to be moving on to big things. How was that for you? Because they bring you back, but Sam.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like, I knew I wasn't a low level guy when some of the guys that I fought, and some of the guys that, you know, when I went to the K1 tryouts, you know, that was an eye opener for me. And once I did well there and at Pat's gym, you know, then I'm like, okay, I deserve to be here, you know. So I've always thought that, hey, he's a man, I'm a man also. Anybody, I don't care who you are, anybody can be beat on any given day, anybody. So my only thing was, I was the old guy. Anyone want to say anything? I was an old guy swinging for the fence. You can say that, but don't ever say to a fighter or hear a fighter say of another, or anybody say that a guy's not on the same level, because fighters have egos. We all do. And yes, there are some fighters that don't belong in a ring with somebody, you know. But there are some people who do, you know. It's just wasn't their night. Sometimes that just happens, you know. But
this is where I refer to, like, you didn't have like a promoter or someone really taking care of you, because if they wanted to, you know, they could have brought you up to face not Sam Stout. You know what I mean? Or something like that.
Well, that was Stephen Patrick's guy. See, I'm also business smart. I always was. So behind Suzanne, everyone says, well, Suzanne's getting you all these fights. They didn't realize I was the real manager. Suzanne had the gift of gab. I utilized her to make the calls, to do this. And she was like the best at it. She was great at email. She was great at talking. She had the gift of gab. I needed to focus on training. I didn't have the time to do all the typing and did phone calls. She did all that, but I delegated it. I was behind her going, contact this person, contact that. There was a few times where she did things on her, you know, on her own, you know, like, you know, contacting Boss Rutan, you know, and said I'm really good to her daughter. So he gave me a one-on-one private, which was great. And then I went to the that seminar. It was like a Krav Maga thing. Oh, by the way, I'll say this real quick. In the Krav Maga thing, there was like, I don't know, over 100 people, maybe 200 people there or whatever. And they were doing these self-defense moves. And they came to me, and the guy went to attack me. And I just I did everything I did learned from my instructors at the Bob Long School of Self-Defense. And I just flipped the guy, got him on the ground, striking him. They were like, the cameras came over, were on me. They were like really impressed with it. And so Boz Rutan and the other two guys that were running it, you know, Amir Peretz and this other guy, who's a cool guy, Darren. His name was Darren. They were using me out for demonstrations. You know, they were impressed with that. So I was thankful that I got the opportunity for that. But yeah, Suzanne definitely, you know, was great with the the gift of gab, making the phone calls and talking to
Yeah.
people and saying stuff, you know.
Following up and the P's and Q's, it's important.
Yeah. Yeah. And she was classy. She was great, you know.
Yeah.
This way she gave me the opportunity to focus on the actual training, you know, and not have to worry about the stress of the contacts and everything else.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So after the Canada return with Sam Stout, you came in and you fought for right at home in Jersey for me for 3 shows.
Yes.
The
Yes.
Euphoria and MFC run there, where again I don't think I did you any favors. You fought all tough guys, Jordan
No.
Damon.
Yeah. Yeah. But back to
Obvious.
the Stout thing. When I'll just say
let's
this.
go.
When I hit Stout right with that right hand, that hurt him a little, you know. And he said after the fight, he goes, man, he's like, my jaw still hurts. He was holding his jaw as after the fight, and I was talking to him, you know.
Cool.
So, you know, even though, like, I know you apologize and everything, but he was led into commenting like, yeah, that was the gimme fight, he said, you know. But because of what you said, that's why he said that. So I was a little like disappointed at him for saying that, because he didn't feel that right after, you know what I mean? He didn't know. I mean, the kid, I looked in his eyes, he was a scared kid. You know, they didn't know anything about me. I'm 37 years old, pushing 38. I'm going to turn 38 the following week. He's 21 years old or 22 or whatever. And, you know, I looked him dead in the eye and I saw fear. You know, so he was like a little bit, you know, but definitely he had mad skills. He had more experience than me with, you know, kickboxing, and he had more fights. You know what I mean? So he definitely was a skillful striker.
You know, you're a little stocky, short, and he's long and tall.
He had long arms. Yeah, he did. Surprisingly, he wasn't that much. Like maybe he was an inch or 2 taller than me, but he had long arms.
And you know, those matchups could go either way. The stocky guy, you know, he got his game off, but you know, it went his way with that. But he's not. You know, how do you feel like when you see
he hit
him?
hard as heck, man? Now give him that. He hit me hard, man. I thought there was something in his glove after the fight. I'm like, what do you got in these? That's what I said. I remember saying that, you know. And that's when he gave me the compliment about me hitting him in the jaw, because he kept his whole hand was like this. He was on his jaw. But you know, that's
how did you feel watching him in UFC later? Like, you know, did you watch him?
I was always rooting for him. I was always rooting for the guy. You know, I look at it this way: the better he does, the better I look. I always look at it through like those kind of eyes, because I'm always looking at the end game of things. You know, like my trainer, Jamie Crowder. You know, he's the Renzo Gracie Muay Thai instructor over there, still to this day, I believe. He told me, he said it in his English accent. He goes, listen, mate, it's not the destination. It's the ride. Enjoy the ride, mate. That's what he said to me. Enjoy the ride. So I always look at it like that. Enjoy the ride and everything, you know. But yeah, you know, unfortunately for my age and everything, I had to look at the end game as well. I had to look at you know, where I'm going to be placed, and my reputation is very important to me, you know. So I wanted to fight big name people because I thought of myself as a big name, you know, and I carried myself. And listen, nobody thought Ali was the greatest until Ali said it himself. He said, I am the greatest, and everyone started believing him. So whether it's mind control, whatever, positive thinking, whatever, or just being blessed with skill, whatever the case, you have to believe that you're doing it. And any fighter who steps into the ring and says he has no ego is a liar. Everybody, that's why you do it. You know, every fighter who goes in there has a degree of an ego, you know?
Yeah. No, for sure. And what you mentioned too, before the Stout fight, where like in terms of mindset, you were a man and he was still, you know, coming up. Your mindset was very strong throughout the whole career. You didn't have too much of a learning curve there. You were on point all the time, you know. Because when I brought you into Euphoria and for those fights, you were pretty, you know, a complete package. You had the management and all the paperwork and everything like that was a piece of cake. It was fine and easy. And then you were, you know, going around training with Renzo and a couple of different people, and you always bought, you know, a certain amount of show and commitment that was, you know, professional. It was excellent. So, talk about Jordan Damon.
Yeah, Jordan, he was, I think, 5-0 at the time when I Found out he was my opponent. I'm like, oh, this guy's a ringer. He's really good on the ground, really good on the ground. And so I knew I had to work on my escapes, and I will say this about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I don't know how it treats other guys, but Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is really tough on the lower back and the joints. I mean, holding somebody in your guard, right? And they're trying to resist. Let me tell you something. That puts a lot of pressure on the smaller your back, And if you have like a history with back issues, or just more inclined to have those kind of lumbar regional areas, the back area, it would take me like a half hour to get out of bed, and this is in my late 30s. So it was rough. Plus working. Another thing, I was a little frustrated and I was a little pissed, I'll be honest, because I was working full time and sometimes working the overtime, because I was just got into the union or about to get into the union at the time. So I had to do all that. And, I didn't have the luxury of training in the early afternoon with Team Renzo Gracie. Renzo would say to me, Joe, you got to get there. You're getting good now. You have to train with the team. And I understood what he was saying, but I had a job. I couldn't just show up there 5 days a week, at that time, at like between 12 and 3. I worked from like.
My hats off to you too, because this is the part where you're, thankfully like a mature man already at that point, because at 22, 23, some people might quit the job, maybe, or go and do the training and stuff, but I would have been
one of those guys myself, but I had child support I was paying, I had to make sure I did that, I had to pay rent where I was living. I just had
life.
Life and gas to get to and from, and the tolls. So when Renzo, said, you don't have to pay, and he had Holes tell me that, and him, both of them were there, and he's like, listen, Renzo said, you don't have to pay. You just come and train with the team. I'm like, I can only get there at this particular time, and so they were like, fine. So that's why I was going there. So I only had to worry about paying tolls,
You're going into the Manhattan Academy then.
The Manhattan Academy, yeah. So and I had to make sure I had gas and toll money, and sometimes I didn't have toll money. I didn't go.
$20 to get into Manhattan now.
Yeah, and plus you had to pay for parking when you were there. So I'm doing all this trying to stay afloat and show him that I'm dedicated. Show Renzo that I'm dedicated. I'm trying to get a win so he could see. I want him. Because then eventually he had IFL, and I was wanted to be on that team, but there was a long list. I'm sure there was guys ahead of me that were trying to get on that team as well, that were better in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu than I was. I like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and respect it, but I came my loyalty was with of course with Renzo, but I was happy to be there and everything, but was with my instructors, even though they didn't support what I was doing at the time. You know what I mean? There was a little bit I didn't go there for a while, and my instructor wasn't happy because that's not what he teaches. He doesn't teach the sporting aspect of things. What those guys would say doesn't work really does work.
Yeah.
No, what I meant to say was what a lot of so-called, I'm not saying names, but a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they frown upon the striking arts, like self-defense arts, and think that stuff doesn't work. And to a large degree, they're right. But that's not true when it comes to the Bob Long School of Self-Defense. Okay, that's not. Those guys were the best.
No,
that's what allowed me to go beat the light heavyweight when I went down to Team Eddie Rowland. And he's a big name in the martial arts world, but I ain't saying his name.
Mm-hmm.
He did an interview, didn't mention my name. I ain't mentioning his name, but just because then it comes across like I'm trying to say I could beat him. Because on the ground, he'd beat me. You know what I mean? If it's just on the ground, he'll beat me. But when we were sparring that day, I beat him. Just like Eddie got me. You know what I mean? Eddie Rowland. But But yeah, he's a good guy too. He's a good guy. He'll always be my brother. Both of those guys, you know. But yeah, so
Now,
that's how
even
that.
with Jordan Damon, uh, you got into the second round, and like you said, his groundwork was above average, and
Yeah, he was. He was real good, and his pressure on top was like he felt like 1,000 pounds. So I was like, I had my escapes down, you know, because he for a while he was on top, and then he had my back. But my defense, listen, I rolled around with Robbie Lawler to a stalemate for like
Mhm.
15 minutes straight. You
Yeah,
know, Robbie Lawler's tough. Okay.
yeah, he's
And Robbie
big.
said afterwards, he said to me, I'm like, oh, I was like so happy to meet him. And I was like, dude. He's like, oh, my name's Robbie. I'm like, dude, I know who you are, man. You're Robbie Lawler. I know who you are, dude. And we rolled. He's like, I'm not really a submission guy. I focus more on escapes. So, and I said, yeah, same here. I focus more on trying to get out of those moves because I like striking, you know. It always came more natural to me. There's a striking aspect, you know. But you know, but that's how that went. It was really good. So I knew that I had pretty good escapes, you know. And if a guy caught me, there was a guy at Renzo's, this one kid. I first started going there, and I would do well with other people. They get me an armbar, I'd be able to get out of it and do this. But one kid would get me in this uh Peruvian necktie, it's called.
Okay.
He'd get me in this move. Dude, and I would tap in seconds. His name was tough kid, you know. Not the greatest fight record, but he fought a lot of killers like I did. His name was I'll say his name because he's a good guy, man. Reno Mirzabekov.
Okay.
It's spelled Renat, but I think they pronounced it. Everybody called him Reno. But
Okay.
he was like the gatekeeper for Renzo's. Like if there was kind of like a guy who was cocky, they would send this guy in to go like spar him, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, I walked with a swagger. I thought who I was, but in a nice way, not in a negative way. So I figured out they're putting this guy up against me to kind of humble me, which it kind of did, you know. He just would sub you quickly. If it wasn't the Peruvian necktie he caught me with, it was the heel hook, you know, and he'd get me like in seconds, you know, and that was like one of my go-to moves. That was good. A guy named Glenn Ortiz showed me at Eddie Rollins the heel hook, you know, and I was tapping a lot of guys with that, you know, but yeah, Reno was a tough guy, man, and he would go up there and like myself, he would go to events. Sometimes we fought on the same event, like in Combat Zone 7. He fought there with me. He won against Joe Lozon. Didn't have a good job. He actually did a spinning spinning back kick, hit the guy, hit Joe Lozon in the head, fell down. Joe Lozon caught him in a heel hook. I think it was like 40 something seconds.
Oh,
the fight was over. Yeah, but Reno, tough fighter, you know. But after I started training with Jamie Crowder, you know, because me and him would go back and forth standing up, you know, me and Reno, you know, and we'd go back and forth. But he was like, you know, moving around. He'd always be trying to run on the outside. He fought kind of like a Taekwondo guy, you know. And I was like, why you running? You know, let's get into the ring, you know. And eventually, you know, I got good for training with Jamie, and I got better footwork. At Renzo's, I learned the art of footwork more than any other place, you know, with the boxing trainer, you know, Eddie, you know. And so after that, he couldn't get me no more, you know, and his submissions, it took him longer to get. And then finally we were like at a stalemate. So he couldn't tap me anymore either. I got to that point. And then he stopped trying to wrestle me, grapple me, and spar me after that. Okay. You know, and Jamie pointed that out to me. He goes, see, he's not doing that to you no more. I said, yeah, I noticed that. Yeah. I said, thank you, you know, you know. Yeah.
So with Euphoria now, obviously with Jordan Damon, you made a good impression because the next time along, I know, you know, my way of thinking too back there is I brought in a foreign opponent to give you a showcase. And, you know, Abe he's a pro from Japan, but I think he was your size.
Pride veteran.
Yeah. He doesn't have a great.
He knocked out Franco. What's his name? Frank Nogueira. Not the heavyweight. I'm not thinking of him.
Yeah,
There's a
Pequeno.
light fighter
Yeah,
who fought.
Pequeno.
Yeah, he knocked that guy out and won a title. That guy was
Yeah.
the #1 featherweight in the world, and Abe knocked him out.
Yep.
And
And
so I
you know,
thought he was going to stand.
Abe was a guy who had an upside down record too, but it was a good test. And I love the guy because we're in Jersey and he came with his full Japanese show sword and the gi and the mask and everything
Yeah.
for the
Dude, he
show.
was the captain for the Japanese team. I thought I was going to get, what's his name's guy? Stephen Hayes guy. Stephen Hay, originally I was supposed to fight that guy, and then it got switched, and Stephen Hay fought the guy that I thought I was going to fight.
Okay.
Before that was supposed to be Sichi Akamoto, you know?
Okay.
And that guy was definitely, you know, a bigger weight, you know what I mean? That's the guy Eddie Alvarez beat.
Yeah.
And then
the thing about Aikimoto, you know, I know those guys because of having booked them. He was bigger than you, but he might have been.
He was a lot bigger than me. Yeah.
He might have been a more interesting match in terms of background because he worked his whole life as a security guard at Don Quixote, which is like call it like a Walmart type store in Japan. So he was the Pancrase's main sponsor owns Don Quixote, but he worked security at the store. So he was a 9 to 5 guy too. And yeah, I remember Eddie Alvarez's crowd yelling at him, Eddie, punch him in the hair, because he was one of those big hair Japanese guys. Talk about the Abe fight, because Abe was a guy that, like I said, put on a show, and he was an advanced guy because he had already done a lot of his career and been to the top.
Yeah, Abe was that was pretty cool. I'll tell you something. Right before the fight, actually, you know, I guess I don't know if it was the day before or hours earlier, when the Japanese team, because he was the captain of the Japanese team, went into the ring and they're, you know, going. So before that, the American team went in there and doing that, you know. So we all went in there for a little bit. And Jamie Crowder, right? He's the one who cornered me for the fight. He goes, listen, he goes, mate, when the Japanese team goes in there, I want you to go in there too. I'm like, that's going to be disrespect. He goes, precisely, mate. Go in there. Just go into the ring like as if like you're on the team, right? Like, you know what I mean? Just go in there and just like do your thing. So they went in there and they were all looking at me like kind of strange, and I'm in there warming up like they are, you know. And it was just like a psychological edge my trainer wanted me to have over him. So I'm like, oh man, this guy's gonna kill me for this. What are you doing, Jamie? You're getting me killed. This guy, you know, guy was like number 8 in the world in 2002. He was number 8, you know. And so anyway, the fight came, and I thought he was going to stand and trade, but I was prepared. You know, I mean, I was getting privates with at the time. I was getting privates with Danaher a lot. I was getting privates with him, and he goes, listen, this guy's dangerous with heel hooks, dangerous. So he warned me, told me, and was helping me a little bit to as best as he could, you know, and I was retaining what I could. And of course, you know, getting privates with the other instructors there as well, you know, like Igor and Hulse, you know, those are the basic guys I would get privates from, you know, because I couldn't always get there when the class started. I remember I'm getting there late, you know. So
that's crazy.
From work, I'm getting there late, trying to find parking, getting there, you know. So it looked like I'm just one in there when I felt like it. They must have thought, you know, and I'm getting private, so they thought I was this rich kid coming in there, you know. And they see me on a poster, like, who is this guy? You know, a lot of them weren't doing what I was doing, but some of them guys were jealous of me because I'm over there getting fights and being on the poster, being on this, and they're like, it's. But I'm putting myself out there, you know what I mean? Like nobody would say it to my face, but I'd hear it behind my back. You know what I mean? So that was another thing that was frustrating to me. It's like, I don't have a lot of money. I'm going out there to fight. I'm doing what they, you know, were thinking about doing or, you know, didn't have the guts to do at the time, you know, and some of them became champions later on when they did it, you know, but, and I ain't going to mention any names on that, but that's the truth. There was a little bit of hate going on there because I was going in there swinging for the fence. And I think it's because I had courage. I had the balls to go do it. That's the truth, you know, and I just wanted that to be known, you know, too. But Yeah, back. What were we saying again?
We were just talking about preparing for Abe because Abe's
Yeah. Oh,
had already been in the top.
So in the ring where the fight starts, round one, right? We're circling, and at this point, my footwork is really good. Training with Jamie and stuff, and I'm circling, going around, and then he throws I throw a punch at him. It slightly connects in his head because he was shooting. So he shoots right after he throws a punch. He shoots, and he goes under and does this move where he's on my leg, right? Right at the moment, Miguel, right at the moment he got my leg was cracking. It was breaking. I heard my knee crack, 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 crack. So we fall to the ground. He's got my heel hook. He's got me in a heel hook, and it's pressure against my knee as well. Because heel hooks, that's what it does. It kills your knee and your ankle. So my head is kind of near the ropes. So I'm kind of inching my way out the rope. So the ref will stand us back up.
Mm-hmm.
Abe complained, goes, I had moved. So I had to go in the center of the ring, lay down. Abe got allowed to get the move on, and then the ref would go, okay, start. And that's what happened. So my leg is cracking. I'm in excruciating pain. You would think that you'd go into shock, you wouldn't feel anything. No, I felt everything he was doing to my leg. I was in utter agony. I tried not to tap the best that I could. I'm not tapping. I'm trying to get him. Now I'm a little pissed. I'm yelling at him, and I'm punching him. And I'm kind of he has my leg still. He's not letting go. And I'm kind of on top of him like this. And I'm trying to punch him, let go of my leg, right? I'm punching him. And obviously he didn't let go. And then he fell back. I fell back more. And then I could hear my brother, Joey, punch him in the head. Punch him, Joey, punch him in the head. And I'm punching him. And then he came back, and then he just got a better bite of it. And then I was tapping, man. That was it. I was in agony. I was on crutches after that. And I wind up going to a seminar he had in the city because he was in New York. So he was I guess around the corner from Renzo's or something like that. So at some other martial arts gym or something. And I went there, and I was watching him drill the move that he did to me, which was probably the first time it was done in the United States, was done on me. Not the technique, but the entry to the technique. Mm-hmm. The entry to that technique was really, really smooth and fast. He was fast as lightning. Yeah. Dude, he was lightning.
Yeah, I think he took that fight seriously also. That's the bugaboo of everybody got 8 weeks for that fight. You had time, you had your training camp, but you are still putting in your 9 to 7. I'm
still working. Yeah, I'm working. I'm training like a madman. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm not training full time, and it's irking me. I'm
I know Abe had a gym. Abe ran his gym. Megumi was the number 1 woman fighter in the world. Was his girlfriend and out of his gym.
Yeah, she was amazing. I met her at the tournament. At the seminar that he gave. You know, so he was honored when I went there.
At this point, you're getting close to 40. You've given it a shot. At what point did you say, look, I can't quit my job. I can't dedicate myself fully, and it's just not worth it. So how that mindset changed? Because you were so focused and so wanting it. But you did the right thing, I think.
Yeah. Well, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to quit my job and everything because the money wasn't great, So I knew that. And in order to be you have to be like a George St. Pierre, and there's very few guys that were like that, or an Eddie Alvarez, Eddie was the guy that was head and shoulders above everybody else. He was the poster boy for he had half the Philly was there at the events, He
would sell
30. I would laugh at his stats. He would say he's 5'10", right? I'm that guy's 5'5", man. He's not 5'10". So when I met him, I'm Eddie. I'm heard a lot of great things about you. Said, dude, I'm a fan, bro. I'm I like to, you're a good fighter, man. He's thank you, man. Thank you. He was a cool guy. So, which it was cool having him come up to me after my fight with Fernando Bernardino. I was giving Fernando those elbows,
Uh-huh.
when he had my back. And right when I walked out of the ring, my teammates, it was Dan Miller, Jim Miller, and Jamie Cruz and Mike Constantino. They were all, great fight. They were all hugging me and everything. And you did a good job, even though it was a draw, you know. But
Mhm.
Eddie Alvarez, what's memorable to me is Eddie Alvarez came over to me. Bro, that was a great fight. My brothers and I were watching it. Like he was like right there.
Cool.
Came up to me, right when I was walking out of the cage, man. So yeah, that was meant a lot to me.
Mhm.
But yeah, he was, that was a tough fight. He got my ankle and just tore it off, basically. So yeah, that was
Abe.
the Abe fight.
And then you took, I don't know, maybe 8 months before you came back and fought a Russian guy, and then you fought Fernando Bernardino. But
Yeah, the
talk about
Russian guy. This is the first fight where I'm gonna say where that guy didn't beat me. Okay, there's
okay.
other fights I lost. Okay, hands down, I lost. All right, those guys got the better of me, or they won, whatever. But
Talk about the fight. I don't recall the details of it, but as you
yeah,
mentioned, Alvarez was at the top of the card,
yeah,
and strictly, I think, a USA versus Russia show. Chris Ligori was on there. A couple of
yeah.
guys
Chris
that
LaGoy was on it. A
Stephen
couple of
Hayes.
guys. Yeah, Batman, KP, Kurt Pellegrino,
Yeah.
another guy who's amazing. That guy's amazing. Amazing wrestling, amazing jiu-jitsu, stand up is good as well. Yeah, he's just real good. All those guys. Um, but yeah, the fight with what's that guy's name again? The
Uh,
Russian guy.
Kulchinsky. Vadim
Yeah, yeah,
Kulchinsky.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Kolchitsky. That was his name. He came out. He hit me with, I think, an overhand right. I hit him, and we're just going back, slugging each other. You know, I had there was one point where he had position on me. He was dominating a position, and then at one point I had his back, and the guy's just about to tap. He was gurgling and everything. I mean, he could have, for all I know. I didn't see it, but I got a photograph of it, of him like this with his hand. It looks like he's tapping, but
Mhm.
I had his back and everything else, and punching him from the back and everything. And we both fought to exhaustion, both of us. You know what I mean? We were supposed to go. I thought it was going to be for another round. You know what I mean? I thought it was going to go into round 3. There was only 2 rounds of that fight. Some of the databases have it wrong. They have they won 3 rounds and he won unanimously. No, it was. I should have won by split decision. That's how I should have won. Because it was a close fight, and but I didn't get the win. They gave him the win unanimously, which was what are you gonna do? I didn't agree with that. He was overweight. You paid me like even more money because he was overweight. I think part of his purse or whatever it was. But I
Okay.
remember. So you're the one who actually came up to me. One of the first persons, aside from my entourage, who would have my friends and fans. They will come up, Joe, you got robbed. You won that. You were the first person to say that to me. You said you got robbed. You actually won that fight. I remember you saying that to me. And
Yeah, and I'm usually pretty fair when I call like I
yeah,
see it. That's from the heart at the show for sure, and that's
yeah,
with a lot of respect, because the judges get it wrong sometimes, but it's like, man, I
yeah,
it still happens. You watch the sport, it still happens. The judges, maybe getting worse, not better. So
yeah.
so so now you're 40. Now you're facing a little bit of reality. Now you got to think like luck hasn't even been on your side. So how do you walk away? How do you walk away and
Well,
stay?
at that point, I was ready to walk away. You know what I mean? And then I still didn't. I just started training. I felt you know, at least would have another win or something under me. So I think it was 2007. I took off and I just focused on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You know,
You put the gi on
so,
the whole gi.
yeah, with the gi, everything. Yeah.
Cool.
And at the same time, I'm training with the team out there. Team AMA. At this point, I'm at AMA. Which is basically in Parsippany. It's near Parsippany.
Okay.
Whippany actually is the neighboring town, right on Route 10. So I'm training with those guys. And I'll be honest with you, those guys are a good group of guys. I'll say this. It was a little cliquey because I was the old guy. Mike Constantino was a great guy, and there's a couple of guys, like Shorty Rock and Tim Troxwell, great guys. They were always helping me, and those guys were awesome fighters, in their own right. Great guys, but there was some of the clickiness. Also, what's his name? Charlie Brenneman was a great guy too. Cool, but there was a couple of times where it's just like really clicky and everything. Because I think only because of this, it wasn't anything personal, but as much as it was an age gap. You know what I mean? They're like my kid's age, my son's age. My oldest son was like their age. He's like in his 20s at the time. So, so I felt a little bit out of sorts there. But the training was great. The training was great. And, but it got to the point when I was training, guys I'd normally beat. And I'd go in the beginning, I was beating a lot of those guys, getting the better of them standing up, But then it wasn't long before I had to eat 2 of their shots to get my 1 in. And then it was 3, and then, and then it was time where
age catches up with the littler guys. At lightweight.
You always got your power. You always have your strength, but it's the timing, the speed, the timing, and all that.
That's why the heavyweights are able to hide it better because speed and timing isn't their bread and butter. But when you lose it, you think of guys like I don't know if you remember Rumi Asado, but
yeah, I remember that name. Yeah, sure, that's legend.
Yeah. As soon as his speed and precision slipped a little, then he was catchable. But before that, nobody could get him. But So, what are you doing nowadays? Are you still training? You talk a little bit about that as we wrap up here.
Well, what I was doing was I was running. I'll just say this. I know this is not on the topic we're talking about, but my sister has stage 4 colon cancer. And so I was, to keep in shape, I work at UPS, and then I have my soap business, the Soap Champion. That's the name of my business. It's Smell Like a Winner with the Soap Champion. But what I was doing, I worked there. That keeps me in shape because UPS, as you know, they work you, So also I was training for a 5K or a 10K, whatever. Actually a 10K I was training for. I think the 10K is 6.2 miles or something like that. And I was going to go up and just to run for cancer, do like a charity thing, just run, for my sister, or for anybody who can't run. I was going to be the person to run for them. But definitely for my sister, my sister Barbara,
For sure. God bless, because your family was always with you throughout all those years too. So at some point,
yeah, we come from we got a close family, my brothers and my sister. So I'm getting a little emotional.
So Joey, thank you very much for this walk down memory lane. Obviously, definitely good to get into contact with people like yourself, people that probably don't have a ton of interviews lined up, but really do deserve to tell their story. An amazing story there, Joe. Thanks, man. And like everybody, a lifelong martial artist, the dedication there. Those are the guys that deserve the time. So I appreciate it, Joe.
Yes. Also, I just wanted to thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And actually, I think there's the one fight we had a draw with Fernando Bernardino. That was a good going. That was a good fight as well, and that was at Battle Cage Extreme 5. You know who fought on the same card as that? That was John Jones fought on. He was like the headliner, I think, of that fight.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, he came up to me after the fight. He's like, "Man, knockdown, that was great." It was because of the elbow. Everybody loved those elbows, and I was throwing when Fernando had my back.
Sure.
And he was gassed. The fight went 3 rounds. He was gassed and kept holding on to the fence. He was a tough kid. Don't get me wrong. He was tough, but he kept holding on, grabbing me leaning me against the fence, but holding on to the fence. And the ref kept coming over and taking his hand off. But it was a tough kid, tough fight, and that wound up being a draw. you know.
Yeah.
And then
Did you think you should have won it? Like deep down?
I wasn't sure after the fights. I knew there was one point in the first round where he had my back for like, just for the position. He had my back for a while, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
So, but I definitely thought that I won 2 and 3. It was close, the second one, but the third one, I felt like I edged that one. Yeah, it was close. So, but whatever. You know, I didn't know how they would, but it wanted to be a draw. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, you know.
Well,
It wasn't a loss. So
hey, that's it's better to go out that way. And like I said, I wish you, if it gotten different, you would have maybe come to the sport younger, but
Yeah.
also maybe found somebody, even myself, or some promoter or teammates or anybody who showed you some love and care rather than throwing you to the wolves. Maybe it would have been different, but at the end of the day, you know, we still have our
Hey, it
story.
is what it is. I have no regrets. I have no regrets other than, you know, like no regrets, you know.
Terrific. You know, if I follow the history of boxing, there's so many tragedies, right? You know, like, and we've been able to avoid that. You're one of those guys that I know you're doing good, you know, with your
Yeah.
business and stuff like that. And, you know, you moved on from it to do positive things. And you're still, you know, big with, I know you're born again and big with Jesus and
Yeah. I can only stand as Christ holds me up, you know. So that's the truth. I can do I can do nothing without him. So
yeah.
Jesus
So,
Christ is my Lord and Savior. And whoever don't know him, you know, just look into it, you know, put your faith in him and he won't let you down. You know, that's what I got to say on that, you know.
I think
And
that's a great way to end, Joey. Thank you very much.
thank you very much. I appreciate you for having me.